Hello. Today is May 4th, as long as I get this video out on time. And May 4th is Star Wars Day, as many of you know. Star Wars is a very complicated franchise to talk about for a lot of people because a lot of people, unfortunately, have fallen out of love with it over the last few years due to a pretty significant change in leadership behind the brand. I get that. That makes total sense. And in today's culture of outrage, it's easy to focus on the negative and talk about why we don't love it anymore or what happened. But I would rather take today to focus on what I do love about Star Wars and what it means to me and has always meant. Because I, like many, have fallen out of love with it, but that's not the important thing to me. What is important is that I loved it in the first place. And I just kind of want to talk about why. Now, my introduction, really, as far as I can remember, to Star Wars was Attack of the Clones. I remember watching that on DVD at what must have been Thanksgiving in like 2003. And I don't necessarily remember the movie specifically too well, but I had flashes of things that happened in it, and I remember my dad telling me how much it sucked growing up, and it did color my opinion of it as I got older. But a few years ago, with a dear friend of mine, I did watch the entire saga again. I had not really watched the prequels outside of episode 3 over and over again. And for all of their quirks and their eccentricities, there is still something to love about each of the prequels, and about every Star Wars movie, really. But from there, I was shown the original trilogy, special editions on DVD in the collection that came out in 2004, ahead of the release of Revenge of the Sith. And there was something that just stuck out to me so much about those movies. And the thing is, and this is something that I tell people that ask me even now whether or not they should get into Star Wars if they haven't, is that it's difficult to do so as an adult if you didn't already love it as a child. Because those movies are a fairy tale. You know, the original trilogy is very much a fantasy story about a family and about how love can conquer evil, and about how friendship is more powerful than hatred. That's what Star Wars is about, at least the original trilogy, and I find that to be beautiful in its own way. And it's something that appeals to a juvenile, childlike type of wonder, type of whimsy, that is difficult to recapture as an adult. And part of me wonders if that is why so many of us have such a hard time connecting with the sequel trilogy. And when I look back, it's probably the same reason that so many fans of the original trilogy had such a hard time connecting with the prequel trilogy. Because the part of our spirit and our souls and our hearts that were initially touched by the material is gone. And so now we only have the way that we remember it. And if anything comes along that dares to challenge that, or does not line up with it, or tries to broaden that, we tend to resist. Now, don't take that to mean that I'm defending everything that Disney has done with Star Wars in the last 10 years. Absolutely not. I just think that if it weren't for us falling in love with the franchise as children, the response to episodes 8 and 9, myself included, would not have been so explosive. Much like the way that things were handled in 1999 when episode 1 came out. Actors were bullied then, actors are being bullied now. It's something that has not changed, and it's honestly a disgusting reflection of our fan base. I believe that most true Star Wars fans are good people. You have to be in order for Star Wars to resonate with you, because it's a story about good people. And obviously the prequel trilogy is different than the original trilogy in theme and message. It's not necessarily so much about love and about family, or at least not in the same way that the original trilogy is. It is a story that is twofold. One, it's about how absolute power can corrupt absolutely, and how those who have power are afraid to lose it. And it's about how far someone will go to protect the people that they love. The story of Anakin Skywalker is a tragedy. And the entire trilogy is about showing the context of the things that are said about Anakin Skywalker in Episode 4. It's about showing how far the mighty can fall. There was so much external pressure from the Jedi Council, from the Chancellor, from the government, for Anakin to walk this very specific path. He never had a choice in the matter. The only thing that he ever chose to do was to try and protect the people that he cared about, the people that he loved. And in doing so, he paid the ultimate price. It's a story of irony, and like I said, it's essentially a Greek tragedy. It's an opera in that sense. It's a space opera. People have said that many, many times, and it's true. Now, it does focus heavily on the politics of that world, which were not as big a part of the original trilogy. And so, for a lot of people, it's not as entertaining. It's not as interesting. It also has almost comical levels of melodrama and dialogue that is difficult to stomach. All of that is true, and if it puts you off, I can't say that that's wrong. But I do think that there's something to enjoy in each of those movies. Just like I think there's something to enjoy in each of the sequels. This is easily my least favorite trilogy in Star Wars. That's not difficult for me to say in the slightest. But I can be honest with myself and admire, particularly in Episode 8, that Rian Johnson wanted to do something different. Because Episode 7's greatest strength is also its biggest weakness, in that it's trying so hard to recapture the feelings that you would have had watching A New Hope for the first time, that it seems afraid to try to stand on its own as a new movie and try to bring in a new group of fans, rather than just appealing to ones that already exist. It's not bold, it's not daring in any significant way. It is simply a retread of Episode 4 with more moving parts. That does not make the movie better. In fact, it holds it back in a lot of ways. But it is the easiest to digest because of how familiar it is. Episode 8 does tread some ground from Episode 5. There's no doubt about that. But it also, in the same breath, is trying to distinctify this new trilogy from the one that came before and the one that came before that. It tries to steer the narrative in a different direction than what we're used to. It tried to generate possibilities for character arcs that we couldn't see coming. It tried to set up Rey to turn bad, rather than just having Kylo Ren turn good like Vader did. It didn't want to be a total retread of the original trilogy, and fans hated that movie. Is the movie perfect? Absolutely not. Is there plenty wrong with it? Sure. But I have to respect some of the things that were done there. And there are things to enjoy in that movie, just like there are things to enjoy in just about any movie ever made, because this is Star Wars. This is a franchise that has brought so many people together. it's nice in a way to see Luke again, to see Leia what is truly one last time. Do I miss Han? Obviously I do. But he played the same role that Ben Kenobi played in episode 4, so he's gone now. It's just heartbreaking to see so many people resist change. And I'm not here to start a brawl in the comments. Like I told you, I don't like this movie that much, and I really don't like the one that came after. But I do love Star Wars, and I always have, and hopefully will continue to. And that means I gotta take the good with the bad. I can't look at a saga of 9 movies and only say that 3 or 4 of them are good, because then it doesn't sound like I like the franchise very much at all. And so from there, we obviously have episode 9, which unfortunately is the product of damage control. The response to episode 8 was not positive from the fans, and so Disney and Lucasfilm scrambled for 2 years to put together some sort of satisfying conclusion that would appeal to people that liked episode 8 and people that didn't like episode 8. And what happens when you try to please everybody is you please nobody. The biggest consequence of trying to make this film in that way is that it happens to muddy the message of the trilogy overall. Like I said, episode 4 is about, or episode 4, the original trilogy, rather, is a story about love and about family and how brotherhood can conquer evil. The prequel trilogy is a cautionary tale about dogma and about overzealousness in trying to protect that which you love. Episode 9, gosh, the sequel trilogy isn't really about anything. On one hand, it's a simple retread of a story that's already been told in a better way. And on the other hand, it's really just a story about nothing. It just kills off all your favorite characters from the original trilogy with the exception of Lando and Chewie and the droids. But Luke, Leia, and Han are gone. Characters and storylines that could have been fascinating, that could have defined a generation, were sidelined out of fear and obedience to corporate overlords from the other side of the planet. Just nothing sticks out in this trilogy as a theme or an overarching message, and it's disappointing in a way. But it does leave me more optimistic than most about the future of Star Wars and what episodes 10, 11, and 12 could be. I think that if Disney and Lucasfilm are smart, they will set episode 10 at a minimum 100 years in the future. I don't think that any characters from the sequel trilogy need to be in this new trilogy. I think that that was something that held back episodes 7, 8, and 9 to a degree that it could never really recover from. It was so desperate to have relevance and attachment to what came before that it couldn't get out of that shadow and tell its own story. Episodes 1, 2, and 3 only have a handful of characters that appear in 4, 5, and 6. It's really just Anakin, Obi-Wan, Yoda, Palpatine, and the droids that aren't really that important, other than, making episode 4 happen. But episode 7 is just like, hey, everybody that you remember is still out there. I hope you know that. Here, look at them. You see them? They're still here. It should have been set way, way, way in the future, particularly if they wanted to go with the angle that so much time has passed, people have forgotten about the Jedi. When it's only been 30 years, that's a hard pill to swallow. Because people still remember who won the Super Bowl 30 years ago. If you want to say that your new empire has been taking children and turning them into stormtroopers, well, Finn's no older than 25, which means that he would have been taken as a baby 2 or 3 years after Emperor Palpatine was killed. I just have a hard time believing that Luke and Leia did nothing as the First Order rose to power. Neither of them could feel anything happening in the universe. That's interesting to me. And so hopefully they will have learned their lesson, and next time we will have a story set in the far-flung future, and we'll have a completely new cast of characters in a whole new world, and we won't have to retread familiar territory. We can carve a new path. We can tell a brand new story that goes in directions that none of us are ready for, but we can all look forward to. Until that happens, we've got plenty of shows to watch, plenty of games to play, and plenty of books to read. And I will see you in another galaxy.